I never planned to be a tutor. As a junior at Riverside High with a perfect GPA and early admission dreams of MIT, my schedule was already packed with AP classes, robotics club, and math team competitions. But when Mrs. Martinez, my calculus teacher, pulled me aside after class that September afternoon, I couldn't say no. "James," she said, adjusting her reading glasses, "I have a favor to ask. There's a new student who needs help with calculus. She's bright, but she missed some foundational concepts at her previous school." I shifted my heavy backpack, already mentally calculating how this would impact my study schedule. "I don't know, Mrs. Martinez. With college applications coming up, it would look excellent on your applications," she pointed out with a knowing smile. "And Lucy really needs the help. She's determined to get into art school, but she needs to maintain AB average in all her core subjects." Art school. I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. In my world, success had a clear path. STEM degree, tech job, secure future. Art seemed like a risky gamble. "Just meet her," Mrs. Martinez insisted. "One session. If it doesn't work out, I'll find someone else." That's how I found myself in the library after school, waiting for Lucy Chen to arrive. I had my calculus textbook open, practice problems neatly written out, and a methodical tutoring plan prepared. Everything organized, just the way I liked it. She was 20 minutes late. Sorry. A whirlwind of paint-splattered jeans and messy dark hair dropped into the chair across from me. I was finishing a piece in the art studio and completely lost track of time. "You must be James?" I looked up and felt my carefully ordered world tilt slightly off its axis. Lucy Chen was nothing like I expected. She had bright purple streaks in her black hair, multiple earrings climbing up both ears, and the most genuine smile I'd ever seen. Paint smudges decorated her hands like abstract jewelry, and a pencil was stuck through her messy bun, threatening to fall at any moment. "You're late," I said, then immediately wanted to kick myself for how stern I sounded. But Lucy just laughed. "Yeah, I do that sometimes. Art doesn't really follow a schedule, you know? But I brought peace offerings." She pulled out a slightly squashed package of Oreos from her backpack. "We're not supposed to have food in the library," I pointed out. "Live a little, James." She pushed the package toward me with a conspiratorial wink. "I won't tell if you won't." I found myself taking a cookie, despite my better judgment. "So, Mrs. Martinez said you're having trouble with derivatives, among other things." Lucy pulled out a battered notebook covered in doodles. "Math and I have a complicated relationship. It's like, you know when you're trying to draw something, and you can see it perfectly in your head, but your hand just won't cooperate? That's me with numbers." I didn't know that feeling at all. Numbers had always been clear, reliable friends to me. But something about the way she described it made me want to understand. "Okay," I said, pulling my chair around to her side of the table. "Let's start at the beginning. Show me how you'd approach this problem." For the next hour, I watched Lucy wrestle with calculus. Her approach was unlike anything I'd seen. She drew diagrams for everything, turned equations into little cartoons, and had a bizarre, but somehow effective way of remembering formulas by relating them to art concepts. "See, a derivative is like sketching," she explained, drawing as she talked. "You're not looking at the whole picture, just how it's changing at a specific point. Like quick gesture drawings in figure study." I blinked. "That's actually a really interesting way to think about it." She beamed at me, and I felt that tilt in my world again. "Same time Thursday?" she asked as we packed up. "I promise I'll try to be on time." "You won't be," I said, but I was smiling. "Probably not," she agreed cheerfully. "But you'll wait for me anyway, won't you?" I should have said no. I had a perfect schedule, a clear plan, no room for unpredictable artists with purple hair and paint-stained fingers. But instead, I heard myself say, "Yeah, I will." That night, working on my own calculus homework, I kept thinking about Lucy's way of visualizing derivatives. It was messy and unconventional, but there was something fascinating about seeing math through her eyes. I didn't know it then, but that first tutoring session was about to change everything I thought I knew about success, art, and most importantly, love. Our Tuesday-Thursday tutoring sessions quickly became the highlights of my week, though I tried not to examine that fact too closely. Lucy was perpetually late, perpetually disorganized, and perpetually fascinating. She started bringing her sketchbook to our sessions, drawing in the margins while I explained concepts. At first, it annoyed me. How could she be paying attention? But then I noticed that her drawings often related to what we were discussing. She turned integration into flowing rivers, derivatives into birds in flight, and limits into horizons stretching toward infinity. Math is everywhere in art, you know, she told me one day, sketching rapid lines while I checked her homework. The golden ratio, perspective, color theory, it's all numbers when you break it down. Just prettier numbers. I looked up from her surprisingly accurate calculations. Is that why you're trying so hard with calculus? Because of its applications in art? Lucy shook her head, tucking a strand of purple hair behind her ear. No, I'm trying because I need it to graduate. But finding the connections makes it more interesting. Everything's connected, if you look hard enough. She showed me her sketchbook sometimes, and I found myself drawn into her world of color and shape and imagination. Her art was like her, bold, unconventional, full of life. So different from my world of clean lines and precise calculations. What do you think? She asked one day, showing me a portrait she'd been working on. I stared at the face emerging from a swirl of geometric patterns and mathematical symbols. Is that me? She nodded, suddenly looking nervous. It's for my portfolio. The assignment was to capture someone in their element. See? I used the derivatives we've been studying in the background pattern, and a golden ratio in the composition. Lucy, this is incredible. And it was. Somehow she captured not just my appearance, but something deeper, the joy I felt in numbers, the satisfaction of solving a complex problem. Really? Because sometimes I worry that I see things too differently from everyone else. Like maybe I'm weird for finding beauty in math equations and chaos in straight lines. Being different isn't bad, I heard myself say, surprising both of us. It's just unique. She smiled then, bright and genuine, and I felt that now familiar tilt in my world. Our sessions started running longer, math giving way to conversations about art and science, dreams and fears. I learned that Lucy had moved here from California after her parents' divorce, that she wanted to study animation at CalArts, that she saw stories in everything around her. What about you? She asked one day. Why MIT? Is it just because you're good at math? I opened my mouth to give my usual answer about career prospects and technological innovation. Instead, I found myself saying, I like how numbers make sense. They're reliable. Predictable. Not like people? She suggested softly. Not like feelings, I admitted. Lucy was quiet for a moment, adding shading to the sketch she was working on. You know, James, sometimes the most beautiful things in life are the ones we can't predict or control. I watched her draw, her hands sure and graceful, creating something from nothing. Maybe, I said, but they're also the scariest. She looked up then, meeting my eyes, and I saw something there that made my heart race. Yeah, she agreed. They are. As September turned to October, I found myself looking forward to our sessions more and more. Lucy was still chronically late, still brought forbidden snacks to the library, still drew in the margins of her notes. But now these things made me smile instead of frown. I started noticing other things too. The way her nose scrunched up when she concentrated on a difficult problem. How her eyes lit up when she finally understood a concept. The small victory dance she did when she got an answer right. James, she said one day, interrupting my explanation of implicit differentiation, do you ever just stop? Stop what? Stop thinking. Stop planning. Stop trying to control everything. I shifted uncomfortably. I like having a plan. I know you do. She put down her pencil and looked at me seriously. But life doesn't always follow our plans. Sometimes the best things happen when we let go a little. Is this your way of telling me you're going to be late again on Thursday? She laughed, breaking the tension. No, this is my way of inviting you to come see my art show on Friday night. It's at this little gallery downtown. Very unplanned, very chaotic, very not your scene. But I'd really like you to come. I should have said no. I had a math team meeting that night, sat prep to do, college essays to work on. But Lucy was looking at me with those bright, hopeful eyes, and I found myself saying, "What time?" Her smile was worth every schedule adjustment I'd have to make. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. She started packing up her things, then paused. Oh, and James? Wear something with paint on it. You're too clean. Before I could protest, she was gone, leaving behind a faint scent of paint and possibility. I looked down at my neat notes, my organized planner, my carefully structured life. Then I looked at the small sketch she left in the margin of her homework, a tiny self-portrait winking up at me. For the first time in my life, numbers didn't seem like enough. I spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready for Luce's art show. After staring at my closet full of press khakis and polo shirts, I finally dug out an old t-shirt from a robotics competition. Then, following Lucy's instructions with perhaps too much literal interpretation, I deliberately splashed some blue paint on it. "What are you doing?" my younger sister Emma asked, watching from my doorway with amusement. "Going to an art show," I muttered, examining my handiwork critically. "You? At an art show?" She raised her eyebrows. "Does this have anything to do with that cute Tutor student Mom says you're always talking about?" "I don't always talk about her," I protested, then caught myself. "And she's not. I mean, we're just." Emma's grin widened. "Oh my God, you like her?" "I'm helping her with calculus," I said firmly, turning back to the mirror. "That's all." "Right. That's why you're destroying your clothes and actually styling your hair for once." I touched my hair self-consciously. "I'm not styling it. I just want to look appropriate for the venue." "Sure," Emma drawled. "Have fun at your not a date with a girl you don't like." I arrived at the gallery at 6:55 p.m. exactly, only to find the place already buzzing with activity. The space was small but vibrant, with exposed brick walls and industrial lighting. People in various states of artistic dishevelment milled about, holding plastic cups of wine and engaging in animated discussions about technique and meaning. I felt immediately out of place, like a math equation in a poetry book. "James." Lucy's voice cut through my panic. "You came." She emerged from the crowd, and my carefully constructed thoughts scattered like loose papers in the wind. She was wearing a vintage dress covered in paint splatters, her purple streaked hair arranged in an artfully messy updo. A smudge of gold paint highlighted one cheekbone, and her eyes were bright with excitement. "I said I would," I managed. "Nice, paint." She touched her cheek and laughed. "Oh, that was an accident. I was putting finishing touches on my pieces and got a bit carried away. Come on, I want to show you everything." She grabbed my hand, her fingers warm and paint-stained against mine, and pulled me through the gallery. I tried to focus on the artwork and not on how natural it felt to hold her hand. Lucy's section was in the back corner. 5 canvases arranged in a sequence, each one more stunning than the last. But it was the centerpiece that stopped me in my tracks. It was the portrait of me she'd been working on, but completed now and transformed into something extraordinary. The mathematical equations in the background seemed to dance and flow, forming patterns that morphed into birds taking flight. My face emerged from these patterns, caught in a moment of pure joy, the way she saw me when I was deep in a mathematical explanation. "Lucy," I breathed, "this is..." "Do you hate it?" she asked anxiously. "I know it's weird, mixing calculus and art like this, but I wanted to show how I see you, how you make numbers come alive when you explain them. How beautiful mathematics can be when seen through your eyes." "Beautiful?" I repeated. No one had ever associated that word with my love of mathematics before. "Well, yeah." She shuffled her feet, suddenly shy. "The way your face lights up when you solve a complex problem, How your hands move when you're explaining derivatives, the patterns you help me see in numbers. It's all beautiful to me. I looked at her, then really looked at her, and felt something shift inside me, like the final piece of a proof falling into place. Dance with me, I said abruptly. Lucy blinked. What? There's music playing, people are dancing, and I want to dance with you. I surprised myself with my boldness. Unless that's too predictable. Her smile could have lit up the whole gallery. James Chen, are you being spontaneous? Maybe you're rubbing off on me. We danced in the corner of the gallery, surrounded by equations and art, my clean t-shirt collecting paint from her dress. Lucy taught me how to stop counting steps and just move with the music, how to let go of planning every moment. See? She said, spinning under my arm. Not everything needs to be calculated. I still like calculations, I told her. But maybe there's room for some chaos too. Later, we snuck up to the gallery's roof deck. The October night was cool, and Lucy was shivering in her thin dress. Without thinking, I shrugged off my paint-splattered shirt and draped it over her shoulders. Such a gentleman, she teased, but pulled the shirt closer around her. Even if you did obviously add this paint on purpose. Was it that obvious? James, I've never seen more carefully applied random paint splatters in my life. We sat on the edge of the roof, looking out at the city lights. Lucy pulled out her ever-present sketchbook and began drawing the skyline. How did you know? I asked suddenly. Know what? That you wanted to be an artist. That you were willing to risk everything for it. She was quiet for a moment, her pencil moving across the paper. I didn't know, really. I just knew that not trying would be worse than failing. Art is how I make sense of the world, like math is for you. It's not a choice, it's just who I am. My parents want me to be a software engineer, I confessed. It's a secure future, good salary, logical progression. But is it what you want? I watched her draw, adding stars to the sky that weren't really there, but somehow made the scene more true. I want to do theoretical mathematics. Pure research. Everyone says it's impractical, that I should focus on applied math and computer science, but it's beautiful to you, she finished softly. Yeah. I looked at her profile in the dim light. When did you get so wise? She laughed. I'm not wise, I just believe in following your heart. Speaking of which, she tore the sketch from her book and handed it to me. This is for you. It was the city skyline, but she transformed it. Mathematical symbols formed the buildings. Equations curved through the sky like clouds. And there in the corner, she'd drawn two tiny figures sitting on a roof, surrounded by floating numbers and paint splatters. It's no theoretical mathematics proof, she said, but I thought maybe you'd like it anyway. I carefully folded the sketch and put it in my pocket. Then, before I could overthink it, I reached over and took her hand. We sat in comfortable silence, her thumb tracing patterns on my palm, until she spoke again. James? I think I'm finally understanding calculus. I turned to look at her, surprised. Really? What made it click? She met my eyes, smiling that bright, genuine smile that never failed to make my heart race. I found the right teacher. The way she said it made me think we weren't really talking about calculus anymore. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions to her art friends, discussions about the intersection of mathematics and art, and stolen glances that lasted a little too long. Lucy seemed to know everyone, floating through the crowd with easy grace, but she always came back to me, as if to make sure I wasn't feeling too out of place. When I finally had to leave, my parents' curfew being one rule I wasn't ready to break, Lucy walked me to my car. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this isn't really your scene. I'm glad I came. I hesitated, then added, maybe my scene needs some updating. She was still wearing my paint-splattered shirt over her dress. Keep it, I said when she started to take it off. It looks better on you anyway. Are you sure? It's your carefully cultivated, artsy look. I think I can find other ways to look artsy. I gathered my courage. Maybe you could help me with that. Outside of tutoring sessions, I mean. Lucy's smile was soft in the streetlight. James Chen, are you asking me out? I'm trying to. Is it working? She stepped closer, and for a wild moment I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she pulled a pen from her ever-present art supplies and wrote something on my hand. Text me, she said. And don't worry about being late to our next tutoring session. I think you've earned a few minutes of tardiness. I looked at my hand. She'd drawn a tiny heart next to her phone number, the curves formed by mathematical symbols. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Lucy's art, about the way she saw beauty in equations, about how she transformed my carefully ordered world into something wilder and more wonderful. I took out the sketch she'd given me, tracing the lines with my finger, thinking about tiny figures on rooftops and the infinite possibilities of stars that weren't really there. At 2 a.m., breaking every rule in my responsible student rulebook, I texted her. Your portrait of me was beautiful, but you got one thing wrong. Her response came immediately. Oh, what's that? The joy in the subject's face. It wasn't from the mathematics. It was from the artist. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her reply came through. Now who's being the artist? I had a good teacher. Dating Lucy Chen was like trying to solve an equation with constantly changing variables, challenging, unpredictable, and absolutely exhilarating. Our tutoring sessions continued, but they'd evolved into something more. We still worked on calculus, but now our study breaks involved quick sketching sessions, Lucy trying to teach me basic drawing techniques, or me explaining the mathematical concepts behind her art projects. Sometimes we just talked, her head resting on my shoulder as we discussed everything from parallel universes to the perfect pizza topping combination. You're different lately, my best friend Michael commented during lunch. Less rigid. I looked up from where I'd been doodling fractals in my notebook, a habit I'd picked up from Lucy. Is that a bad thing? No, just unexpected. Like you showing up to robotics club with paint on your shoes, or actually agreeing to help with the drama department's set design. The paint on my shoes had been from helping Lucy with a mural she was painting for her portfolio. The drama department thing. Well, they needed help with the geometric patterns for their backdrop, and Lucy was designing the costumes, so it just made sense. I'm still me, I said. Just maybe a slightly revised version. Michael grinned. A Lucy-influenced version, you mean? I couldn't deny it. Lucy was changing me, but not in the way I'd always feared change. She wasn't trying to turn me into something I wasn't. Instead, she was helping me discover parts of myself I never knew existed. The real challenges started when our worlds began to collide more directly. It happened first at my house. My parents had insisted on having Lucy over for dinner, curious about the girl who'd been taking up so much of their academically focused son's time. So, Lucy, my father said as he served the pasta, James mentioned you're interested in art school. The way he said art school like it was a slightly concerning career choice made me tense up. But Lucy just smiled warmly. Yes, Mr. Chen. I'm hoping to study animation at CalArts. Their program combines traditional artistic techniques with modern technology and storytelling. Animation? My mother exchanged a look with my father. That's interesting. But surely you have a backup plan? Something more practical. Mom, I started, but Lucy touched my hand under the table. Actually, she said, animation is incredibly practical in today's digital age. The industry's projected growth rate is fascinating. Would you like to see the statistics? James helped me research them. The mathematics behind animation is pretty complex too, especially when you get into 3D modeling and movement algorithms. I watched in amazement as Lucy proceeded to engage my parents in a detailed discussion about the technical aspects of animation, market projections, and career trajectories. She'd done her homework, presenting her passion in terms my technology-minded parents could understand. Later, as I walked her to her car, I said, "That was impressive. What, you think you're the only one who can speak math?" She grinned. "I've been paying attention during our tutoring sessions, you know. Numbers can tell stories too." I pulled her close, kissing her softly. You're amazing. Keep that in mind, she murmured against my lips, because you're coming to meet my mom next week, and she's intense in her own way. Lucy's mother, an art professor at the local community college, lived in a small house that looked like an explosion in a paint factory. Every surface was covered in art supplies, half-finished projects, or books about various artistic movements. "Mom," Lucy called out as we entered. "We're here." Deanna Chen emerged from her studio, paint-splattered and beaming. She looked like an older version of Lucy, minus the purple hair. "James. Finally. Lucy's told me so much about you. Come, I want to show you something." Before I could respond, she'd whisked me away to her studio. The walls were covered in large abstract paintings filled with geometric patterns. "Lucy mentioned you're a mathematician," she said, gesturing to the paintings. "What do you see?" I looked closer at the swirling patterns and suddenly saw it fractals, golden ratios, perfect geometric progressions hidden in the seemingly chaotic designs. "The Fibonacci sequence," I said, tracing the spiral pattern with my finger. "And here, these angles form a perfect logarithmic spiral." Diana's face lit up. "Exactly. Art and mathematics, they're just different languages describing the same universal patterns. Lucy says you understand that better than most people." I glanced at Lucy, who was watching us with a soft smile. She's the one who taught me to see it. The evening was going well until Diana casually mentioned Lucy's father. "He never understood," she said, shaking her head. "Always wanted Lucy to be more practical, more focused on real careers. That's partly why we moved here after the divorce, to get away from his constant pressure about her choices." Lucy's hand tightened in mine, and I saw a flash of pain cross her face. "Mom," she said quietly, "can we not?" "I just hope," Diana continued, giving me a pointed look, "that Lucy finds people who support her dreams, not try to change them." The implied warning was clear. Later, sitting on Lucy's front porch, I asked her about it. "Your dad. Does he know about your art school applications?" Lucy leaned against me, sighing. "He thinks I'm applying to business schools. We haven't really talked since I told him I wasn't interested in joining his company." "I'm sorry. It's okay. Not everyone gets it. That's why." She hesitated. "That's why you're so special, James. You're all about numbers and logic, but you still support my art. You tried to understand my world. Because you tried to understand mine first," I pointed out. "All those calculus sessions where you related everything to art, you were building bridges between our worlds before I even realized it." She smiled, but there was something worried in her expression. "Speaking of bridges, have you told your parents about your theoretical mathematics plans?" I hadn't. The acceptance letter from MIT's Pure Mathematics program was hidden in my desk drawer, while the computer science acceptance sat proudly on our family bulletin board. "I will," I said. "Soon." Lucy sat up, looking at me seriously. "James, you taught me that numbers don't lie. Don't lie to yourself about what you want." The problems started multiplying after that. As college decisions loomed closer, the pressure from both sides increased. My parents started making more comments about practical careers and sensible choices. Lucy's mother, perhaps sensing my hesitation about my future, became cooler toward me. Our friends didn't help either. My robotics team couldn't understand why I was spending so much time helping with art projects. Lucy's art friends made snide comments about left-brain types cramping creativity. Even our tutoring sessions felt the strain. One afternoon, after Lucy had aced her calculus test, she found me staring at my MIT letters. "Tell them," she said softly. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." She took my hands. "You taught me that sometimes the hardest equations have the simplest solutions. We just have to be brave enough to solve for X. And if they don't understand, then they'll learn. Like I learned calculus, like you learned to see beauty in chaos." She smiled. "Like we learned to love across the divide between art and mathematics." "When did you get so wise?" I asked, echoing our conversation from the gallery rooftop. I had a good teacher, she replied, and kissed me. That weekend, I finally showed my parents both MIT letters. The conversation was long and difficult, full of terms like job security and career prospects, but when I explained how theoretical mathematics made me feel, how it was my art just as much as painting was Lucy's, something shifted in their understanding. You really love this, my mother said, not quite a question. As much as Lucy loves art, I replied. She taught me it's okay to love something that much. My father was quiet for a long time before saying, then you should pursue it. Just maybe keep your coding skills sharp too? It wasn't perfect understanding, but it was a start. When I told Lucy, she hugged me so hard I nearly fell over. See? She said, eyes shining. The truth sets you free. Even if the truth is that you're a math nerd who wants to spend his life proving theorems nobody else understands. Says the girl who wants to make cartoons for a living. Hey, those cartoons will have excellent mathematical accuracy, thanks to my amazing tutor. We were figuring it out, step by step, like a complex proof or an intricate painting. Different approaches to the same beautiful truth. That love doesn't always follow logical patterns, and that's what makes it perfect. The college acceptance letters arrived within a week of each other. MIT's pure mathematics program for me, CalArts for Lucy. Our dreams were coming true 3,000 miles apart. We were sitting in our usual spot in the library when Lucy got her mail. Her excited squeal broke every library rule, but for once I didn't care. I got in. She threw her arms around me, her joy infectious. I actually got in. I held her tight, feeling simultaneously thrilled and terrified. Of course you got in. Your portfolio was amazing. I couldn't have done it without you. She pulled back, her eyes shining. All those late nights you spent helping me with my artist statement, all the encouragement when I was ready to give up. Pretty sure I was just returning the favor, I said, thinking of how she'd supported my decision to pursue theoretical mathematics. We make a good team. Her smile faltered slightly. Yeah, we do. Which is why. Don't, I said quickly. Not yet. Let's just be happy about this right now. But the conversation we were avoiding followed us like a shadow. 3,000 miles. 3 time zones. 4 years of separate lives. The problem was, there wasn't a clear solution. No mathematical formula could optimize this situation. No artistic perspective could reframe it into something less daunting. Our friends had plenty of opinions. Long distance never works, Michael told me during robotics club. Especially freshman year. You'll both be meeting new people, having new experiences. You could differ for a year, Lucy's friend Jade suggested during one of our group study sessions. Take time to figure things out. But differing wasn't an option, we both knew that. These opportunities were too important to put on hold. The stress started showing in small ways. Lucy began missing our tutoring sessions, not that she really needed them anymore, but they'd become our special time. I threw myself into advanced mathematics preparation, sometimes forgetting to text her back for hours. It all came to a head one rainy April afternoon. I found Lucy in the art studio, working on her final project, a massive canvas covered in interwoven mathematical and artistic symbols. We need to talk about it, she said without looking up. We've been avoiding it for weeks. I sat on a paint-splattered stool, watching her work. Even now, the way she moved with her brush fascinated me, precise yet spontaneous, planned yet free. Okay, I said. Let's talk. She put down her brush and finally turned to face me. I'm scared, James. Me too. But not of the distance, she continued. I'm scared that we'll try to hold on so tight that we'll stop each other from growing. That I'll be sitting in my dorm at CalArts, missing you so much that I won't go to that experimental animation workshop. That you'll skip that late-night theoretical mathematics discussion group because you're worried about missing our daily call. I understood what she meant. We'd both fought so hard to follow our dreams. Would trying to maintain our relationship end up holding us back? So what are you saying? My voice was barely a whisper. Lucy crossed the room and took my hands in her paint-stained ones. I'm saying, Maybe we need to approach this like one of your math problems. What are our givens? Despite everything, I smiled. Okay. Given. We're going to different schools across the country. Given. We both need to focus on our studies and take advantage of every opportunity. Given. I love you. She squeezed my hands. Given. I love you too. Given. Neither of us wants to break up. So, she said, what's our solution? I thought about it, trying to approach the problem logically. We need flexible boundaries. Not a breakup, but not traditional long distance either. Go on. No pressure about daily calls or regular visit schedules. We focus on our studies, our growth, our new experiences. But we stay in each other's lives. Share the important things. Like parallel lines, Lucy said thoughtfully. Moving in the same direction, always connected by the equations that define them, but with space between. Did you just use a math metaphor? You've rubbed off on me. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. But parallel lines never meet, James. I pulled her closer. That's only true in Euclidean geometry. In other geometries, parallel lines can meet at infinity. Now who's being poetic? I learned from the best. We spent the rest of the afternoon planning not rigid schedules, but guidelines for how we could support each other's growth while maintaining our connection. Lucy started drawing as we talked, creating a visual representation of our ideas. See? She said, showing me the sketch. Our paths may diverge, but they create beautiful patterns in the negative space between them. The last few weeks of senior year became precious, each moment weighted with the knowledge of our upcoming separation. But instead of clinging desperately to each other, we tried to model our future approach. I encouraged Lucy to attend a weekend art retreat, even though it meant missing our planned movie night. She pushed me to accept an invitation to an advanced mathematics seminar, despite it falling on our month-iversary. We were learning to love in a new way, not by holding tight, but by letting go just enough to allow for growth. The night before graduation, we sat on the roof of the art gallery where we'd had our first real moment. Lucy was wearing my old paint-splattered shirt from that night, now covered in many more artistic accidents. Remember when you asked me how I knew I wanted to be an artist? She said, sketching the cityscape again. How I was willing to risk everything for it. You said not trying would be worse than failing. Exactly. She looked up at me. I think love is like that too. Not trying to make this work would be worse than trying and failing. I took her sketchbook and added some mathematical symbols to her cityscape, something I never would have dared do months ago. We're not going to fail, I said. We're just solving a more complex equation than most. With more beautiful variables, she added, correcting my attempt at artistic notation. Speaking of variables, I pulled out a small package. I have something for you. Inside was a set of high-end digital drawing pens. These are for animation, I explained. I researched the best ones for CalArt's program. But there's something else. I showed her how each pen had been engraved with a different mathematical formula, the equations that define parallel lines meeting at infinity, the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence. So you'll remember that art and mathematics aren't so different after all, I said, and that some connections transcend distance. Lucy's eyes welled up. I have something for you too. She handed me a small canvas. On it, she painted a complex mathematical proof, but each symbol was composed of tiny drawings, memories from our time together. Our first tutoring session, the gallery roof, late nights studying, shared laughs and stolen kisses. So you'll remember that even the most complex mathematics can tell a love story, she said. We stayed on that roof until dawn, talking about our fears and hopes, making plans and breaking them, drawing equations in the air, and painting possibilities in our minds. As the sun rose, Lucy looked at me with those bright, clear eyes that had first tilted my world off its axis. We're going to be okay, aren't we? I pulled her close, thinking about parallel lines and infinite points of intersection. Better than okay, I said. We're going to be extraordinary. The first semester of college passed in a blur of new experiences, challenges, and growth. Lucy and I kept our promise. We stayed connected without holding each other back. Our communications were irregular, but meaningful. Late-night texts about breakthrough animations or exciting mathematical proofs, shared photos of our new worlds, voice messages filled with stories and laughter. She sent me snippets of her animations. A mathematical equation that transformed into a flock of birds, a proof that bloomed into a garden. I sent her pictures of my whiteboard covered in theoretical mathematics, and she'd find patterns in my equations that even I hadn't noticed. But nothing could have prepared me for seeing her again at Christmas. I was waiting at our old spot, the gallery where everything had started when she arrived. She'd dyed her hair completely purple now, and there was a new confidence in her walk, but her smile was exactly as I remembered. "James Chen," she said, stopping a few feet away. "Still solving impossible equations." "Lucy Chen," I replied, drinking in the sight of her. "Still making chaos beautiful." We stood there for a moment, the space between us charged with 4 months of distance and growth. Then she launched herself into my arms, and everything else fell away. "I missed you," she whispered against my neck. "Skype doesn't do you justice. You're one to talk." I pulled back to look at her properly. "The purple suits you." "Yeah?" I was inspired by this really complex visualization of wave functions I was working on. "Want to see?" And just like that, we fell back into our rhythm, but with new depths added by our time apart. We spent the evening sharing our new worlds with each other, her laptop and my tablet filled with evidence of our separate but intertwined growth. "Look at this," she said excitedly, pulling up an animation project. "I used those formulas you sent me about topology to create this morphing effect. My professors couldn't believe the mathematical precision behind it. And here, I showed her my latest research project. I was thinking about your art when I approached this proof, looking for the patterns in the chaos, like you taught me. It led to a completely new way of solving it. We ended up on the gallery roof again, just like old times, but now with 2 laptops and a tablet between us, sharing pieces of our new lives." "Remember how scared we were?" Lucy asked, leaning against me. "About growing apart?" "Technically, we did grow apart," I pointed out. 3,000 miles apart. She elbowed me. "You know what I mean." We were worried we'd hold each other back, but instead, we pushed each other forward. I pulled up an email from my professor. "See this? My approach to advanced topology, the one inspired by your animations, it's being published in an undergraduate mathematics journal." "No way." She grabbed the tablet, reading eagerly. "James, that's amazing. What about you? Tell me more about this experimental animation showcase you got selected for." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, let me show you the piece." She opened her laptop, pulling up a stunning animation that combined mathematical concepts with fluid artistic expression. I called it Parallel Lines at Infinity. I recognized elements of our story in the piece, equations transforming into art, rigid lines becoming fluid, 2 different patterns moving apart but creating something beautiful in their intersection. "Lucy, this is incredible. I couldn't have made it without you." She took my hand. "Not just the mathematical concepts, but everything you taught me about finding beauty in precision, about how logic and emotion can coexist." "Funny," I said, "I was just thinking about everything you taught me about finding precision and beauty, about how creativity and structure aren't opposites." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching her animation play on loop, my research paper open on the tablet beside it. "I have a theory," Lucy said suddenly. "Oh, do tell, Professor Chen." She sat up, adopting a serious expression that was betrayed by the twinkle in her eyes. "It's about love and distance and growth. Want to help me prove it?" "Always." "Theorem. Love doesn't weaken with distance if it's built on mutual growth and understanding." I smiled, falling into our old pattern. "Interesting. What's your evidence?" "Exhibit A." She gestured to our computers. "Our work has gotten stronger because we share perspectives across disciplines." "Exhibit B." I added, "Our communication has become more meaningful because we focus on quality over quantity." Exhibit C. She continued, pulling out her sketchbook, the same one from our tutoring days, but now filled with even more complex combinations of art and mathematics. We've maintained our connection while expanding our individual horizons. Solid evidence, I nodded. But what about the future? This theorem needs to hold true beyond one semester. Lucy turned to face me fully. That's where you come in. I have a proposition. She flipped to a new page in her sketchbook and started drawing as she talked. Next semester, CalArts is offering a special course on mathematical principles in animation. And MIT has that summer research program in geometric visualization. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting we find more intersection points for our parallel lines. She showed me the drawing, a complex diagram of our next few years, with potential points of convergence highlighted. We maintain our separate paths, but look for opportunities to bring our worlds together. Professional opportunities, not just personal ones. Like you doing an animation internship in Boston during your sophomore summer, and you doing research on mathematical visualization that could apply to computer animation, creating our own theorems instead of following traditional ones. Exactly. She looked at me hopefully. What do you think? I pulled her closer, looking at the drawing that mapped out our future, not a straight line, but a beautiful pattern of intersecting paths and shared discoveries. I think, I said, that this is the kind of advanced problem I want to spend my life solving. She smiled, that bright, clear smile that had first tilted my world off its axis. Good thing you have an excellent tutor in thinking outside the box. Good thing you have an excellent tutor in finding the patterns inside it. Later that night, as we walked through the quiet streets of our hometown, Lucy stopped suddenly. Hey, James? Yeah? Remember that first day in the library? When I was late and brought contraband arose? I laughed. How could I forget? I thought you were going to be the death of my perfectly ordered study schedule. And instead, you taught me that the best things in life don't always follow a schedule. I squeezed her hand. That sometimes the most beautiful equations are the ones we couldn't predict. She stood on tiptoe and kissed me softly. Not bad for a tutoring assignment, huh? Best homework I've ever done. As we walked home through the winter night, I thought about how far we'd come from that first tutoring session. I'd signed up to teach Lucy calculus, never expecting that she would teach me something far more valuable. That love, like art and mathematics, doesn't have to follow conventional rules to be true. Our path forward wouldn't be easy. Distance would still be hard, schedules would still conflict, and we'd have to work to find our intersection points. But we had proven our theorem. Love built on understanding and growth could span any distance. I looked at Lucy, her purple hair catching the streetlight, her hand warm in mine, and realized that sometimes the best teachers are the ones who show us how much we still have to learn. She had taught me to see beauty in chaos, to find art in equations, and most importantly, to let love rewrite all my carefully planned formulas. I'd volunteered to be her tutor, but in the end, she had taught me the most important lesson of all, that the heart has its own mathematics, and sometimes the most complex equations have the simplest solutions. You just have to be brave enough to solve for X.